Good morning and welcome to Spid's YouTube. For the next, until I get bored of it, I'm going to be doing some Netrunner VOD reviews. If you just want to get to like the literal VOD review, there'll be like chapters and the little YouTube timestamp thing. You can just skip to that. But I think it's worth like grounding VOD review content by understanding who I am and my relationship to the game, what I want to get out of the VOD reviews, and all of these sorts of things. So at the start of the first of however many I do of these, it could be 3, it could be 40. I wanted to just give a quick explainer on who I am, some sort of background information you might need to know for who the audience of this is especially, and just to like do a little bit of onboarding before we actually get into the VOD review. But the VOD review I think I have for today, the games that I played earlier this afternoon, were pretty good, and I'm excited to do a little bit of VOD reviewing. Okay, so hold on. I've already fucked this up. Okay, overview. So we're going to go over 3 main questions. Who am I? What am I hoping to get from this? And who is this for? By what am I hoping to get from this, I specifically mean like, what am I hoping to get from creating VOD reviews and doing this VOD review process? So, hi, my name is Spider. My online pseudonym is Spids, as you will have seen somewhere around you. Like it's going to be in my fucking YouTube name or on Discord or whatever. So some history with my Netrunner experience. I only started playing this game in November last year. I think that's like pretty critical considering this game has been out for like at least 2 years. Yeah, I started playing November last year, and since I landed back in Melbourne in about February, every couple of fortnights I've been going to the little catch-ups that they have in Melbourne, and I've gone to a couple of tournaments. I've gone to the Melbourne Districts on April 26th, I've gone to the Canberra Megacities May 24th, and I've gone to a local CTK, which I think stands for Casual Tournament Kit, in June 26th. And I got like okay results. I think for a newbie these are pretty respectable results, but there's like clearly room for improvement. Now I say this just to mention like primarily that I don't have a lot of Netrunner experience, and there's going to be tons of like Netrunner commonly understood like matchup knowledge, or commonly understood like cards you're thinking about, or match, or like, you know, if someone does X play, it's likely they're doing it to set up Y play. Pretty common things that people know about that I have just like no idea about. Like I haven't played that many games. I've probably played less than 200 games of Netrunner, which isn't a lot of games to have played. But I did play another game before this. I played Legends of Runeterra. I played that for the 4 years it was around. It's still technically around, but I've obviously played it a lot less now that it's been like, you know, the competitive scene has died. So in 2021, technically, I played in the OS Invitational, and in 22, I did some decent tournament results. If you've ever played LOR, none of this matters, right? You're not going to look at this and be like, oh, top 32. That's a really meaningful metric to me. But I mostly present these. One, if you know LOR, you can sort of get a little bit of understanding of what this means. But mostly just to say that like I have, for the last 2 or 3 years, been pretty into trying to like express myself well through competitive card gaming. So this included some good tournament results in my first year of being competitive in a game. Then the year after, I did also a fair bit of competing, although I ended up casting Worlds that year and doing some of the Opens, which was incredibly cool, and I'm really glad I got to do it. But it meant I wasn't competing as much. And then the year after LOR died, which was 2024, was when LOR had died. I still played a little bit of it in the grassroots scene that existed, and my team and I won like the premier tournament for that. I'm not going to go over what too much of this means because it's not, none of this matters to a Netrunner audience. But my point is to say primarily from that is that I do have an enjoyment over trying to do well in card games and understand them to such a degree that I'm able to play on a competitive level. Although, as I've tried to articulate here, it's less so that like I think I want to do well in tournaments for the purpose of like, hell yeah, look, I'm so good, I got first place in bloody blah, but more so that like, you know, what card games do is they give you like a nebulous set of rules, and they're very complicated and very interesting with a ton of cards and all this sort of stuff that makes it very, very fun. And I like feeling like I've got a mastery over understanding all of that. Like I understand how all the mechanics interact with each other, how all the cards and the card selection and the decks interact with each other. And having that mastery and understanding is a really like enriching experience. And I'm sure if you've played card games, you sort of understand what I'm going for that. And so like doing well in tournaments, and what I'm trying to express with the LOR stuff is that like, you know, I've done that to, I think, like a pretty decent degree when it comes to LOR, and I'm excited to do the same for Netrunner, despite being quite new to Netrunner. And so I've written here, my enjoyment of card games can be reduced to a pretty simple idea. I enjoy the feeling and satisfaction of having such a mastery and understanding over the underlying systems and consequences of those underlying systems, which is basically saying I enjoy trying to understand card games, right? I think that's fairly universal for people that play card games. But, you know, some people play card games just to like, you know, do a particular power fantasy, like maybe they like the cyberpunk setting specifically of this game and they just like enjoy enriching themselves in that. That's not like where my enjoyment comes from. It comes from like doing quite well, or not doing quite well, but like doing well because I've expressed a skill expression over a certain gameplay style, blah, 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 blah. So it's like this learning, right? Me trying to get better at understanding how Netrunner works, and that is typically expressed through doing well in tournaments, in as much as that's where everyone else is coming in to also do well and express the game at its highest form of expression. But that's the point of the VOD reviews. I want to get better at understanding the mechanics of Netrunner. So there's 2 bits of context to add on to this. I did do VOD reviews for LOR. That was not on this channel that I'm putting this to. I'm putting it on like what is my main channel, even though I've got like 2 subscribers. So it's not like it fucking matters. But I did do this for Legends of Runeterra, and there are going to be some stark differences between my VOD reviews for LOR and Netrunner, which is that I had already played LOR for like 2.5 years by the time I even started doing that, and I'd already been competitive in it for like a long time, while in Netrunner, I'm not. This meant that like the audience for an LOR VOD review was like, they were coming to me because I was already like pretty decent at LOR. I already like knew a lot of what was going on, and so if you're an amateur or you're learning the game, there's like a lot you can learn from someone who's already like got decent tournament results. And if you're like a tournament player and you've done well already, like there's always something interesting about that conversation between like 2 really good players trying to decide on like the very minuscule value of some sort of line. Netrunner, I don't know what like 20% of the cards do. I've never like seen them before, and I have to like reread and remember all of the rules, even like basic stuff like when paid ability windows are, because I just don't know a lot of that. That's important when watching this, because you're gonna probably get annoyed at me a little bit if you decide to stick with this, because I'm not going to remember what the rules are going to be for specific things. The other thing is that I've done decently in LOR, but there could not be more different games, right? LOR used mana, it was unit-based, and even within like the unit-based, mana-based Nexus health, like 20 health on the opponent's hero that you're trying to deplete, realm of card games, LOR was like uniquely unit-based, right? Like this sentence doesn't mean a lot to me, but I know it means a lot for people who play Magic and other card games. Kill a unit was, for the most of the game's lifetime, a 7 mana spell, and it was like a good card that you would run in your Shadow Isles decks. Now that was actually buffed to 6 mana, like I don't know, 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years ago now. But yeah, my point is to say that like Netrunner is like all like engine based and like taxing people on an axis of like credits, as opposed to taxing people on mana per resource or trying to get rid of their hand or something like that. It's a very different way you're trying to like find win conditions and pressure your tempo points and value points. And you're not like killing a 4/4 by trading a 4/1 into it, and that's like a rewarding interaction, right? That's not at all about how Netrunner works. Which is really exciting for someone like me who knows nothing about what's going on and is excited to like try and see a completely different other world of card games. But it also means that like I can't just translate the fact that like I was decent at tempo decks or decent at aggro decks in LOR, because it's a non-translatable thing, other than like general theories of value, general theories of tempo. I'm hoping I'm not peaking. I hope I'm not peaking. And these sorts of things. Okay, so what am I hoping to get from this? I've put this in like philosophical notation, but the point of VOD reviews are pretty simple. I want to get better at understanding the game, and VOD reviewing is one of the better ways to do like improve yourself and to get better at understanding what's going on and see like the alternate lines, or like if you're doing something poorly or doing something greatly, all these sorts of things. So conclusion, I opt for VOD review. It's worth like analyzing here that like I know that VOD reviews aren't like the only way to get better, right? In LOR, I spent 1.5 years just like climbing ladder and getting like via just watching content creators and like learning stuff from them. And then I spent another 1.5 years like getting via osmosis, like getting a ton of information from a ton of really good players constantly. I have to like recognize that I can't afford that time anymore, right? LOR released when I was in high school and during COVID, 2 of like the most consequentially freeing times you could create for someone. Right now I've got uni. Now I like do other things with my time. I go out and see friends as opposed to staying in my house, or all of these sorts of things. So I just don't have the time to like do all this like investing into Netrunner just sort of passively. So if I'm saying I get to do like 2 games of Netrunner a week on Jinteki, and I do like 2 VOD reviews, or like 1 VOD review of both, sorry, hitting my microphone, 1 VOD review of both of those games, then like that's about as much time as I can afford to it, and I want to like maximize the amount of engagement I'm doing with Netrunner in terms of like active intention. But like that's not going to be the only way people learn stuff, and I probably should like read more stuff if I wanted to actually get better in like a more holistic way. Okay, so what am I actually hoping to get from this? Like, very strictly, I want to get better at the game. I want to understand the game better. And when I'm in competitive settings, like the mega cities in a couple of weeks, is it called mega cities? I think continentals. I'm able to play strongly as I can. We'll see if this works. I hope I get better, but maybe I'll get worse. Who knows? That seems unlikely to me, though. Of minor value, of course, that Netrunner isn't like a content-heavy game. There's not like tons of content. It's not like there's like 7,000 hours of content uploaded every minute like you might get for a game like Minecraft. That was similar for LOR. But like, I think it's worth just saying that it's cool that like to create stuff for the internet for people to consume for a game they like if there's a lack of content for them to consume. Okay, so who's the audience for this? For the LOR VOD Reviews, as I mentioned earlier, there's like a decent, obvious audience that people who want to get better and like, you know, if they're at this level of skill and I'm like at this level just because I'm like already masters for a couple of years and already playing in tournaments, they can like try and match it. And if we're already at like this level, there's like differences in what we're good at or bad at or different ways of viewing the game. That's not going to be the case for Netrunner because I've played like very few games of it. I don't know what some of the cards do. Like, I don't know really what's going on. So that means that audience isn't really there for it. So that does mean the audience is changing for this. There are 3 tiers of audience member in my mind that I'm prioritizing in a sequence. Primarily, I'm doing these for myself. I want to get better, and I just want to like use this as an excuse to go over my games. I'm making it into YouTube stuff because I'm actually gonna like, if I'm making a creative process and I'm like talking to like a fake audience member and possibly even communicating with people in like the comments and stuff, which I will be doing inevitably, I'm more likely to get it done. The second I've grouped as my partner, and that's not because my partner is fake and doesn't exist. They do in fact happen to be real. But my point is that if you don't know what every card is, this hopefully should be accessible. I mentioned this because I was telling my partner about a game my partner got me into Netrunner. Sorry, I guess I should mention that. My partner got me into Netrunner. But I was mentioning a game I was playing in the league in the week previous to this, before we'll talk about what game I'm talking about in a second. But the week beforehand, I was mentioning that like I was doing this really cool play where I was trying to like threaten an enemy on one server because there was an unrose piece of ice and they knew where the other enemies were, and they only had 2 cards in hand and or 3 cards in hand or something, and no 1 card in hand and no cards in the deck. And so if there was an enemy there, I res it. If they run into it, I deal 2 damage and they die. And they didn't know what an enemy was. And it occurred to me that, to me, an enemy is like a fundamental card of Netrunner. It's like, you know, you learn Sure Gamble, Hedge Fund, Spin Doctor, then you learn an enemy, in my mind. Like, it's so obviously important because I've played against a ton of Jinteki, and every Jinteki deck is running 3 an enemy. But it was clear to me that, like, I can now refer to pretty, like, I don't know, 60, 70 cards by name and assume that someone will get it. But I'm going to try and make sure I'm, like, being very explicit about which cards I'm talking about and what their effects are in case you don't know, right? Like you know, random person that's watching this might already know like immediately what red level clearance does, but I'm going to assume my partner doesn't know what red level clearance does. And if you don't know what red level clearance does as a card, this is hopefully going to be accessible content. This does mean that if you do know what it is, it's going to be really boring hearing me be like, red level clearance is a 1 mana operation that does blood. It might be 2 mana, I forget. 1 mana, I think, operation that does blah, 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 because you already know that. So the third audience member is anyone else who already knows a lot of the stuff, but it's not going to be aimed at you, and that might be boring. So just keep that in mind. If you watch this and you're already bored, then do something else. Okay, that's all. Let's go over the deck list and then the games. I'm gonna put both of them into this video, I think, because they weren't too long. But let me quickly organize that for you. First, we'll go over the deck list. So I have to click this button. Boom. This is the deck list that I'm bringing. I don't build my own decks. I steal them because I don't have the time to build my own decks, and I think playing well-made decks is a lot more fun in Netrunner, like having like a deck that actually has a consistent idea. And so this is the deck I'm bringing. I'm pretty sure I lost to this in the NAM or Melbourne tournament that I went to. But I want to explain what the deck is and just quickly go through like what the purpose of the deck is, so that when you're watching the game, you can kind of see if we're like following the deck's purpose or not and try and understand it a lot fully. So now we're getting into like full-on yap time. So this is the Lat deck. Let's talk about what Lat does. Lat is a shaper guy that says if you have the same amount of cards in your hand at the end of your discard phase as the enemy gamer has in their hand, you draw an extra card. It gives you this like little fun minigame where you're like trying to match cards and you get a ton of extra value if you match cards. It means you want to have easy access to certain types of draw, but because you can like draw at the start of your turn with like a Dr. Nuka giving you 3 draw just whenever you want and then do stuff with it, it creates some really interesting lanes. But there's like 2 to 3 main parts of this deck. The first is the sort of program engine. So Madani is a relatively new card that is a 2-mana console. I'm going to say mana a lot when I mean to say credits. A 2-credit console that says once you've installed it, so that'll eventually cost a click, for another click, and whenever you want from then on out, you can host any number of programs in your hand on this hardware. This sort of acts as like a bonus extra hand size, but it's important to recognize this in conjunction with LAT, where if you have like 8 cards in hand because you've drawn a ton, and then you Madani out like 4 of your cards, you can like really easily mirror the amount of cards that the enemy gamer is going to have by choosing how many you want to host on Madani. Maybe you want to keep some of those programs in hand and not just put all 6 or whatever on Madani. Then you can just install that program, paying its install cost once per turn. Importantly, once per turn does mean on the enemy gamer's turn, so when the corporation is going, or as they finish their turn before you start your turn, you can install something, which is important for a card like DZMZ Optimizer, which makes it so that every card you install per turn costs 1 less. It gives you a memory chip as well. These two are like the main cards for sort of the basic value engine that you're going to be playing for a lot of, right? You want to put a ton of things on Madani, then put 2 out, two out every turn, and that you put 1 out on your turn and 1 out on the opponent's turn, and continually cycle these cards, getting them much, much cheaper because DZMZ Optimizer makes them cheaper. That's like the main idea behind the deck, and that's what's like exciting about it in terms of its fantasy, in addition with LAT. Let's go over some of like the basic value cards. You've got Dr. Nuka, which is, you know, you play it as a connection, has 2 counters on it. When you use a counter and a click, you draw 3. Pretty simple way of just getting extra cards. You know, you spend 3 clicks as opposed to 6 clicks to draw 6 cards, right? Pretty basic stuff. Stone Chip Chart Room, very similar. Whenever you want, you draw 2 cards. There's important like lat stuff with this that I'm not going to get too tough into, but like if they do a Spin Doctor, you can then do Stone Chip, so you're both at 7 after you discard and then you draw, but that doesn't happen in this game and it's not too important to worry about it, and the charge thing does not matter. You've got No Free Lunch, which is 0 mana, gain 3. I'm not entirely sure why this is in here. This is something I'd have to ask the deck creator, but I think it's just like a more modular version of Shore Gamble, basically. Like they both cost a click and they both give you, you know, this gives you 1 less credit than that, but it lets you get rid of a tag and it doesn't have like the restriction of already having 5 credits. But it's like it's a Shore Gamble side grade, is my understanding. And then you've got, let's go over Spec Work. Spec Work lets you trash an installed program, gaining 4 and drawing 2 cards. This deck has a very common engine, which I've used a ton, and I really, really enjoy, which is the Coalescence, Muse, and what used to be Aesop's Pawn Shop, now Knick-Knack O'Brien, where Coalescence is 2 credits and gives you 4 credits. Basically, you don't have to read all that. It just says 2 credits, give you 4 credits. Muse lets you search for that or a couple of other things, but primarily Coalescence. And then a card like Spec Work lets you trash a program and gain a benefit. So once you've gotten your 4 credits of Coalescence, or you've got like an empty Muse just hanging about, you get to trash it, take it back. And Knick-Knack O'Brien is very similar, which is when you do a run, you get to trash a program, gain $2, get a credit, get a card draw. That's like the main econ engine, right? You've got this, you know, all your programs are cheaper and you get to have more of them in your hand and you get to draw a ton engine. Plus, you know, you've got this Coalescence Muse engine that's giving you a ton of stuff. I guess included in this is your Fermenter, which my partner knows what Fermenter is, so I don't really have to explain it. But you gain your credits, like it stacks credits on top of it, and then you can click to gain all of it back, but that is interruptible if the opponent wants to get rid of virus counters. So often, like, you'll put this in your Madani, and then you'll install it, and then you can do it on the opponent's turn to get, like, 2 counters on it really, really easily. But that's, like, the econ section. So there's a ton of value from Lat, Nuka, Stone Chip, and Draw. You get a ton of credits in your, you know, cheapening from Optimizer, and Coalescence and Muse, and Spec Work. I'll go over the 2 tech cards quickly. Airblade lets you get rid of net damage and when encountered abilities 3 times. I've seen this as a pretty common tech card for the current meta, but it's just a tech card. That's all you need to understand about it. Deep Dive is a pretty common concept that I've seen a lot of decks run, which basically says if you run Archives, HQ, R&D, you get to like pretty reliably find an agenda by just clicking the Deep Dive button, gaining 2. But if you're able to gain clicks there's exactly one way to gain clicks in this deck, so if you're able to do it via that, you can look at 2 cards. That way to gain clicks, and I guess I should put this at some point. I'm very new to the game, so I don't know how to pronounce every card, because in LOI, everything was in English. So I'm going to call this card Pisha, but I know that's wrong already. But basically, if you run past an ice, you gain a click. That's the only way to make Deep Dive work for more. But honestly, like the point of Deep Dive, I think, most of the time in this deck is to gain your last 2 agenda points. Or, you know, if you've really found both of these cards because you've drawn through your whole deck, then, like, you know, you can get 4 or 5 agenda points in a late game format. Okay. Only one more thing to go, and then we can actually get into the game. Let's talk about what the programs actually are that aren't just econ. So, first off, you've got your Fractors, and Fractors are things that break barriers. You've got 3 Propeller, 2 Principia, assume it's pronounced that way, and 1 Rising Tide. So Propeller is like really efficient, right? It like you only need to spend actual money for breaking the subroutines. You can increase strength just by having the 4 tokens on Propeller, but then you can't use it anymore. What's good in the current meta, in my understanding, I don't know a lot about the meta because I haven't played a lot, but like, you know, it breaks your Tattoo Bowler for like literally $1. It, you know, interacts with Boto of the Water Tribe pretty easily, and all of these sorts of things. Principia is similar, but Principia, you know, you can increase the strength whenever you want, and it's relatively cheap. The point of this card is that it costs $4, and it costs less to install if you have other icebreakers, but when Knickknack sells it off, you get $4 from it. That's like the entire point of Principia. It's actually part of this Coalescence engine. It just circumstantially also breaks barriers, which can be nice. And then finally, you've got Rising Tide, which is like a very efficient increased strength barrier thing. It's cheap to install, but you need to increase its strength every single time you use it, basically. But instead, if you have a ton of Fractors in your heap, you get that strength for free. So the idea is that, you know, all your Propellers are gone after you've used them a couple of times, or you've sold them off to Knickknacks in with your Principia, and this then naturally has like 6 or 5 strength, right? And then it's going to break through basically anything in the game, including like a Brawn, which is like a very strong barrier. Okay. Code gates and sentries. You've got 2 Oiler and an Echelon. Oiler is basically like a decent code break engine, but you can also a code gate breaking engine, but it's also cheaper the turn you install it, which means you can do some cute things with Madani. It's also worth mentioning at this point, I guess, that there's a Simmel chip in this deck, or 3 of them, which lets you install things from your discard pile, so you can get your Coalescences back, you can get your Fermenters back, Copulation, which we'll talk later. But also, like, if you really need to, you can get your Oiler back, or something like that. Echelon is the only sentry breaker in this deck, but you don't need to worry about that too much, in part because my understanding is that Echelon is not like, or sentries aren't that big in the current format, or they're not that worrisome. But in addition, you've also got a Physarum Entangler, which helps work for code gates as well as primarily, due to the only 1 Echelon, sentries. But yeah, Physarum Entangler lets you bypass ice if it's not a barrier by just spending a little bit of money. Finally, there's Copulation. This card lets you host something, which is like sort of like trashing it, but you don't have to pay a trash cost. And then if you breach HQ, you get to see extra cards. I mentioned this with Simmel Chip because I played a game against someone where the way they won is that they Simmel Chipped out their Copulation like 2 turns in the same turn twice, which is a really clever idea that I hadn't ever thought of, and Simmel Chip lets you do that really easily. But Simmel Chip, like, it has a lot of text, but basically you just need to read it as install a program from your heap, you pay a little bit less for it, and if you've ever like trash something with your Knickknack or your spec work, you don't have to trash anything else with it. But otherwise, if you didn't do that, you'd have to trash something. That was a lot of yapping to just explain what the deck is, but I think it's worth grounding what the deck is supposed to do. It's supposed to play its Madani, get a ton of value from like easy, good, access to credits through your spec work, access to draw through spec work and Nuka and Knickknack, and then like it's got a very efficient Icebreaker suite, and then it tries to go in. Okay, finally, it's a VOD review. We're only 23 minutes in. Let's actually get to the VOD. So, this is the game. You might recognize this word right here. My enemy gamer is actually the guy that made the deck, which I thought was kind of funny. I haven't used this program in a while, by the way, so if I'm fiddling with a program, bear with me. So this is my opening hand. I've got Muse, Oiler, Rising Tide, Echelon, and Dr. Nuka. Now, if you've ever played card games before, you know that like mulligans, you should put a lot of thought into your mulligan. The mulligan is like one of like the greatest decisions you can make, and it will impact a lot about the game. I think it impacts a little bit less in Netrunner than it does in other games, which is a good or a bad thing, depending on what you're thinking of. But this is a really interesting mulligan. So my understanding of what you really want in Netrunner, as well as this deck in general, sorry, can I hide that? Is that you're looking for like a way to make it so that you're not clicking for things as a basic action, right? Like if you're clicking to draw, that's like feels worse than if you just started with a card that makes clicking, drawing cards via clicks more efficient, right? So like Nuka says, another way of reading Nuka's text is just that it makes clicking to draw worse than activating Nuka, and you could do a more efficient thing if you just started with a Nuka in your hand. So starting with a Nuka is nice because there's no other reason to click to draw. You get to already have the more efficient version of that in your start. Now, Lat is lucky that Lat already has draw, but you don't get to like do that draw very much, right? Nuka lets it give it to you in bursts, which is nice. That being said, there's like no money here, right? So you can Muse out a Coalescence, but Muse costs 2 and Coalescence costs 2, and you're only gaining 4, so it's like a neutral play. It only works if you have a Spec Work or a Knick-Knack. So I'm looking at this hand and thinking, well, it's got draw, and you'd rather have draw value than credit value to start, because you can always draw into credit value, but you can't credit into draw value. So the fact that it starts with a Nuka, and it's got all 3 breakers, especially this one, which is a really tough thing for us to find. Like, this is one of 2 ways we can to get past sentries. I thought I would keep this hand, but I knew that keeping this hand was risky in that if I don't find a good way of getting credits, I don't like this. If this card doesn't draw me into Spec Work or into Knick-Knack or into Coalescence plus DZMZ as like a way to cheapen the Coalescence or like a Fermenter, it'd be really tough. But like, it's pretty likely to draw into it. I think this is like not that tough of a mulligan, but it was different because I've never had a mulligan that had all 3 different icebreakers. I've typically had mulligans in this with this deck that are like, you know, a Nuka, a Spec Work, something. So I decided to keep this hand. How do I... Okay, hold on. It's been a while since I've used this program. Give me like half a sec. First off, there's no way we're watching this at 1x speed. I forgot that it did this, where you increase the speed, but that's okay. So the enemy gamer, this is already interesting to me. The enemy gamer clicked to start. They chose to mulligan, and then they clicked to draw a card. This to me implies that like, they don't have a standard asset ice, or they don't have like a standard asset that they're comfortable doing, right? To choose to click means that their hand is something where they want something more in it. This is like my basic understanding of how this goes. To me, what this implies to me is either they are agenda flooded, which means we might see an ice here anyway, or they're like combo based in some way, but like Alco is typically not a combo thing. It's just like a Jinteki kill slash asset slash other thing deck. I've played a lot of Alco. It's hard to sort of express what Alco does, but I've played a ton of it and played against a ton of it. But that's what that implied to me. This was like I'm sure someone who's played a lot more Netrunner can like more pinpoint what they think their hand is, but as a very basic level, I saw this as like a little bit of agenda flooding, and they can't do like a basic ice asset or asset. Okay, so what do they actually do on their turn? They decide, They decide to install and then click for a credit. Now, I'm assuming they did this at the time because they couldn't then do ice asset, and they might have assets but no second ice, or they might have a second ice but no asset. But if they have one or the other, that's why they wouldn't do that, especially if they have an asset but no ice. If they're clicking for credit, they might not have like a Hansai review or something that lets them get a ton of money, or like a hedge fund. And so I'm looking at this and thinking, well, for one, they probably have agendas in hand. And so I could try and break through this. I mean, I have icebreakers, but like, let's say something like a Saisentan that costs a lot to break through with an icebreaker, and or does net damage, and I'd lose a lot of my good cards. I don't think it's that important for me to hit HQ, especially since, like, let's say it's agenda, and 2 non-agendas. Like, 2 out of 5 chance I hit nothing, and I've just spent my whole turn, like my setup turn, when I should be getting like a ton of resources doing nothing. Now, with Lat, it's very easy for me to get to 5 cards. I can get to 5 cards. After you discard, you get to 5 cards, and then you still get to draw. So in my mind, the obvious thing to do is Nuka, click, and then find some stuff to do. And so I'm pretty sure that's what I opt to do, right? Nuka, click, and I find a no free lunch, Airblade, and Muse. None of this is like fantastic engine building, right? Like, with what you want to do with Lat, my understanding of like the Lat Alco matchup is that like Shaper stuff does really well later on in the game because you have all these engines built up. But like, I want to build those engines up early, before they're able to like set up too much of themselves. Like, they haven't set up like a FUT or a cohort or like things that they're trying to set up yet. So if I could set up things, I could be ahead on tempo. But I don't get any of that setup. I don't get my knickknacks. I don't get my spec works or my Madani. right? What I do have is a little bit of money. What I do have is like my cool funny tech card and a second muse, which is only really good for like getting me coalescence once I've already done my engine, or like finding specific icebreakers. So I thought this was kind of like a bad draw. And I'm sitting here, I spent a lot of time thinking on my turns. It's a habit I brought from LOR. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do. What I ended up deciding to do was play my no free lunch because it's free. Sorry, why can't I undo that? Can I not? It's been so long since I've used this program. I play my no free lunch because it's going to get me money at some point, and I know I'll need money, especially because like if I plan to do a muse play, I'm going to be spending some money. And I decided to muse out my fermenter, right? This is a play I'd never done before. I'd actually never seen anyone use muse on fermenter like this, which might mean that it's like a terrible play because I've never seen anyone do it. But I think it made a lot of sense for the position I was in, where I don't have good access to money. They haven't set up particularly aggressively. So if they're doing a slow play, I can do a slow play. And this is a slow play. This is like in 6 turns or in 4 turns. I'll finally have something going strong for me, economy-wise. But for now, I'm showing that like I'm not able to run something. If you wanted to put like an ice here and an agenda here, you could probably score it if you really wanted to. But that implies that you would need to have that in hand. Now, maybe they do have that in hand. I'm not entirely certain at the point in time I'm at. But that's why I did that. Plus, I wanted to get to 5 cards, so I would draw, so I played 2 cards and did that. I don't think I discarded anything, did I? I must have needed to discard something. No, I didn't. No, I didn't have to discard something. Yeah, I think that tracks, actually. And I draw another draw card, which is nice. It just will hopefully let me find something good. Enemy gamer, much quicker on their turn. I guess it's hard for you to see, actually, the action log. I might move my face next time. But they play a petty cache that they discarded last turn from archives. Then they choose to draw a card. Then they play FUT, and they put an ice in front of it, and they res FUT. Now, this is a really interesting decision, because to choose to res FUT means they expect that I'm either going to steal an agenda soon from like possibly HQ or R&D, or they're going to score an agenda soon. And so instead of like making me not know what FUT is, they're just saying, yep, I've got a FUT here, deal with it, or you're going to take damage very, very soon. Now, because I decided to do a setup turn, it's also not easy for me to set up icebreakers and go through and feel comfortable with whatever they have, right? Like it'll take me like at least 2 to 3 turns to have money plus all 3 icebreakers that guarantee I can get through this without harm. Now, I could just put my barrier breaker in and like beat a tattoo bowler, but I don't know that yet. I don't know what the ice is. Now, I don't exactly remember what was going on through my brain here, so I'm very curious to actually hear. Maybe erroneously. Bowler. Yeah, so I'm still thinking about tattoo bowler. I think I spent a lot of time thinking about what I want to do here. And my decision I decide is Nuka. Now, you might ask, Spider, why did you choose Nuka? And that's a great question. In my mind, I am probably not getting through here this turn. Possibly, nor do I want to get through it this turn. Now, I know in Jinteki, there's an in-region 2-1, like an agenda that you can just install advance, and so they can proc that and deal like some net damage. But if that's all they're doing next turn, I'm not too upset about that, right? They're getting 1 agenda point, they're doing a little bit of damage, but like they're not setting up anything, right? Well, I could be setting up. What I was hoping for from my Nuka was specifically Madani, right? I'm on 3 copies of it. If I get a Madani, I can put 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6, 7 minus 1 because the Madani cards in there. That's a lot of cards. That's a lot of value. I was also hoping for like a DZMZ optimizer to try and get more cards. I was hoping for a spec work to get credits without needing to pop my fermenter. I didn't get that. So I'm looking at this hand and I'm thinking, well, what I can do is I can install something like the Stone Ship so that I can draw cards on my next turn, and I can install my Propeller, which I can afford, and I can just take it a little bit slowly and figure out what I want to do. Now, keep in mind, it looks like I've got 1 credit here. This is wrong. I have 4 credits because I've got the no free lunch whenever I want to pop it. So like I can spend my next 3 clicks playing cards. I lose a card. We're both at 5. They set up something they want to set up, but like I've set up a little bit myself. So that's what ends up happening. It'll take some time for me to decide what that is, but I decide on Airblade, Propeller, and Stone Ship. Now I choose Airblade. This might be a misplay. I chose Airblade because it's cheap. I chose Airblade because like this costs 3 mana, this costs 2 mana, this just costs 1, and I want to have options in hand rather than like already have spent my credits already, right? Like I'm trying to be modular for future turns, right? I've got a hand that really allows myself for some modularity, right? If I see a code gate or I see a sentry, I can just beat it. And importantly, they don't know that I've got access to code gates and they don't know I've got access to sentries. Now, maybe HaverOfFun is hand reading me and is like able to hand read me. I don't know like the ease to hand read someone like me right now. But that was my understanding. So I play that. I think I discard my... What did I discard? I discarded a propeller. I already had a propeller and I've already got Rising Tide, so I can already break through barriers. I didn't think I would need my second propeller, and like that'll buff my Rising Tide when I eventually put it down, so I think that's like a really obvious discard. And Lat draws me a spec work. Yes! 4 credits, 2 draw. I can like pop my fermenter and then use spec work on the Muse, and like that'll give me like 10 credits. I say that because I think that's what I do next turn. But now HaverOfFun has a turn. HaverOfFun clicks to draw again. I didn't realize they did this 3 turns in a row. For me, this implies their hand must be super mega awkward, and I probably should have put more HQ pressure on this game than I did, because I think I run HQ twice the whole game. But this like decision making implies to me that like HQ pressure would have been nice. Possibly it implies to me that like Muse plus compilation could have been something I go for a little bit harder. I think like we'll talk about this when the game ends and see what decisions I could have made differently, but I think that's like one of them. Okay, so they drew, installed. I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is a fucking agenda. Like, if this isn't an agenda, I'd be very surprised. In my mind, this is like a 3-1, like Sting. I basically assumed this was Sting. And was like, okay, that's gonna deal 3 damage to me when that procs. And I've got cards in hand I like want at some point that I don't want to like wait till I find a Simul chip in order to get back. Like this, what am I dragging? Hello? This Oiler and this Echelon, I will like need, and preferably sooner rather than later. I'm looking at this and thinking this turn I'm running. This turn I'm either trying to get into server 2 and hoping it's not bad, like it's an asset that I get to trash, but I'm pretty sure FUT, I'm like 99% sure, FUT says, oh, I should be explaining what opponent cards do. No, I forgot. FUT says for every counter on it, do a net damage +1 for if you steal or score an agenda, if its agenda is stolen or scored. And so if this is an agenda and I steal it, I take 3 damage because it's always 2 at max 2, but it's counted up to 2 +1. So like 3 net damage is bad for me. I don't want to take 3 net damage. That's like too much net damage for me. So in my mind, here's what I'm thinking. I can probably make it into one of these servers, right? I like have a propeller, so if it's protected by a tattoo bowler, I get through. Well, let's say it's not protected by a tattoo bowler. Let's say it's protected by like a Sisentan. So tattoo bowler is a barrier that only costs 1 to break through, and it's really easy to get through, but it gives them money for resing it. That's why it's in the deck. Or it could be like a Sisentan, which costs 5 to res, but does a ton of net damage unless I install my Echelon, I think, which will break through it. That's where my mind was at. Now, I have a very basic understanding of Netrunner, but part of that understanding is that most of the time, end of the run subroutines are on barriers specifically. So Propeller can probably beat an end of the run subroutine. So push comes to shove, if this is a code gate, like a Vampire Ronasa, which is like an expensive code gate that gives them a ton of money, makes us lose money, gives them card draw, does net damage. I'll still get through even if I don't have a code gate thing, because none of things says end the run because it's a code gate. So in my mind, the safest thing to do is to either run in with just money, right? So like if it's a big barrier, I just spend some money on it and I get through, or I install my Echelon to break sentries so I don't take net damage. But if it's a code gate, I'm probably okay. That's where my mind was at the time. So I'm thinking, can I install Echelon and have enough money? And I can. I can pop this for 6 credits. I can play spec work for another 4, and I have 2. And then -3 by praying for the Echelon. I can have about 9 credits going in to this run and have an Echelon installed. And I get to break this, and even if this is a agenda, okay, they scored an agenda. That's not too bad for me. if they have an agenda there. Like, cool, they scored a sting and delta damage, or they scored a regenesis and just got an agenda point. That doesn't bother me too much. And if it's a cohort, then they get a turn of value from it, and then I can choose what to do with it next turn, right? If I ran this server and it was an agenda, I'm taking damage from this and damage from this, and like, cool, I get a bit of this, but I could lose a big part of my hand, and that could be really, really bad. Now, I'm going to let you know what I'm thinking is wrong. Now, it's not entirely wrong. But what I'm forgetting is that like a really common card right now is a card called Scatterfield. And you know what? I even intended to show this card off. This is a card that's like really common, especially as a splash for Jinteki decks. My understanding is that the whole reason that it's like that is because it's a code gate that says end the run. It's cheap, it's a code gate that says end the run. A cheap thing with 0. The point of it is basically for the subroutines to fire early game. That's my understanding of how you're supposed to evaluate ice. Is that if it's got 0 strength and it's relatively cheap, if you're trying to use the subroutines. Now this has 4 strength when it's the only piece of ice protecting a server, which means it's never going to be part of like a whole glacier that's like protecting something. That's my understanding of a card like this. And so I should have been looking at the at this scenario and thinking this could be a Scatterfield. And importantly, like, it's not like the sentries, like Saisentan, that I'm scared of break, like end the run, right? I think, like, my understanding, again, I don't know the whole card pool of the game, but my understanding is that, like, Scatterfield should have been prominent on my mind. What I should have done this turn, I think, is I should have installed my Oiler. It would have costed 4 credits to bump the Oiler up, based on just what the text says on Oiler, but I can break through things instantly. Actually, it might only cost 2 credits. Wait, if it's a Scatterfield, it costs nothing, because Scatterfield has no, no, it's got 4, sorry, apologies. It's got 4 strength, so it would have costed me 4 credits to break 3, because it's a 1 strength that takes 2 for 2 strength, I think. 2 credits for 2 strength. So basically, all I needed to do was, like, pop Fermenter, play Oiler, and probably, to trash this, I probably would have needed to spec work the Muse. And that would have been click 1 Fermenter, click 2 spec work, click 3 Oiler, click 4 run. And that would have been a great decision. And even if it is a Saisentan, I have 5 cards in hand. Saisentan does 3 damage. I still get to trash this. There's nothing here that's going to deal 3 damage to me.
Hi, sorry, I'm quickly editing this, and I'm noticing another thing that I just, like, totally missed, which is that I have an Airblade. Like, this whole time I'm talking about, oh, I don't want to deal with a Saisentan. A Saisentan's going to be really bad. But I have an Airblade, which is basically another way of breaking the 3 subroutines on Saisentan, and only cost me the 1 install that I did for Airblade a couple turns ago. Or, like, nothing, because I already have it installed, so it's free right now. So, like, I obviously there's a ton of really good arguments I'm giving right now about, like, why I should have done Oiler, because, you know, it would get me through this piece of ice. And I also say at some point that, not many code gates end the run, or I say something like the main things that end the run are barriers. That's just, like, not true. I've just looked up what, like, code gates are around right now, and, like, tons of them end the run. So, like, I should be thinking about Oiler as a way to get through things, and not just barrier breakers to get through Tattoo Bowler and Boto. But, like, that should have been blatant to me. Now, I never actually used my Airblade the whole game, even though I should have, because there is a Saisentan at some point, and I could have saved 3 credits from using my Airblade as opposed to breaking the subroutines with the Echelon. But I completely forgot I had Airblade, and I feel really silly for not having played it. Anyway, I'll let it play out.
Right? It's not like it can be a Fuji plus something. It's not going to do something crazy like that. So that's what I should have done. Obviously, I'm thinking Saisentan. I'm thinking, well, the worst case scenario for me is Saisentan, not like a Scatterfield. It wasn't in my brain at the time. So I went in. I did the play I was talking about. I think, like, the moment I install Echelon, I remember that Scatterfield exists, and I regret my decision. Now, I spent a lot of time talking about this, and it might be kind of obvious why I accidentally run the wrong server on accident, I think. Maybe not. But yeah, it's a Scatterfield, and I don't get in, and I spent all my clicks, and it's really bad for me, right? So what I drew from my spec work was another spec work and a Nuka. This is a great draw. I'm really, really happy with it, because I already have, like, stuff I'm willing to throw away in my Muse. And Nuka, great for value, right? Like, I'm super happy with this. I think I choose to get rid of Physarum Entangler. And I choose to get rid of Physarum Entangler because if you remember back into the original thing I was saying, right? If I have an Echelon and I have an Oiler, I don't need Physarum Entangler anymore. I've got the things. And there isn't a lot of rig shooting, which is like getting rid of programs in Jinteki. my understanding is that rig shooting is basically just STS drone deployment, which is a Wayland agenda. So like I should be safe if I can just install this fucking card. And even if I can't, there's like there's another one in the deck, and I have Symbol Chip in the deck. So it's not that bad to like lose Physarum and this, but Physarum I thought was like the least good one in my hand. So I get rid of Physarum and Tangler. But I spent a lot of time thinking about it. I get mad at myself for like not thinking about Scatterfield, and I know I'm making this into a VOD review, and I'm like, yeah, make sure you mention Scatterfield, Spider. Now this guy talks. You can't see the text. My enemy gamer says thinking. You might think, why are they saying thinking? Because they already know that this is a I already know this is an agenda, right? By the way, this came here. It was a little bit fast. This came here because the subroutine on this says install a card from HQ. What this is this is a humanoid resources. So if I had ran into this, it actually would have been pretty good for me. But humanoid resources is a kind of complicated card. But basically, you spend your whole turn, which is a lot, but you gain 4 credits, you gain 3 cards, you install 2 cards, and you may play an operation. This basically gives you like more than a turn's worth of value, but the turn is like predetermined for you, right? Because it's specifically these actions. You might be thinking, wow, Spider, you're safe. There's no agendas. You'll be good. You're wrong, of course, because you weren't thinking about the crazy moon pool line. So one of the things they installed was a moon pool. They installed a moon pool, and they installed a 1-2 agenda, right? So you need 2 things, and it gives you 1. They installed specifically a card called Hybrid Release. Now, Hybrid Release is an agenda, the 2-1 agenda, that says if there's a face-down card in Archives, you can then install it. So it's kind of hard to see what they did here, but basically, moon pool. I mean, my partner knows what moon pool is, so I'm not going to explain it too hard. But moon pool says 2 cards in your HQ go into Archives. And then from Archives, 2 upside down cards, if they're agendas, go into here, but you get to advance something twice. So from that humanoid resources, one thing they installed was the agenda. Then they used the moon pool they installed from the scatter field to add a ton of agendas from hand to Archives to put 2 credits onto the 1-2, which means they got to activate their FUT, which means we lost a ton of health. These were the cards they put away. It does mean that my analysis of them being agenda flooded was correct, though, because it meant they had 3 agendas over the last couple of turns. And so I'm glad I was correct on that hand read, that probably meant they were agenda flooded, which means in future I can be a little bit more certain that if someone's drawing early, it does mean they're agenda flooded, and it's not just like a theory that I've got, or a hypothesis. That was a really good turn for them, and it would have been way less good if I had just installed the code break. So it's like, you know, lesson number 1. Install the code breaker if you're a code gate breaker, if you're going to be like trying to hit something that looks like this. Right? I was thinking Tattoo Bowler and Saisentan, but it's probably more important that I was thinking Tattoo Bowler plus Scatterfield. As like the things that are going to end the run that are cheap that they would have installed early to protect something like a FUT that they're also going to present as rezzed early. Whoa, okay, so that's the early game. In my mind, I've like segmented this game up into like different sections. This was like the early game section, right? And I feel like I did poorly in the early game, particularly because I let this stay around and I just ran into it installing the wrong ice. Now, they did manage to trash the Oiler, the Rising Tide. You can't see that, my head's in the way. I'll move it next time. And the Spec Work. Actually, like, hold on. Sorry, my bad. Let's do this now. I can just like do this. I can just like make my head in a different spot. I think. Nope, that's not the right play. Whoopsie daisies. Holy, I'm a genius. Okay, that'll make things easier. I should have said that way earlier. So they got rid of Spec Work, Oiler, and Rising Tide. Oiler, again, code gate breaker. That kind of sucks. Rising Tide is bad, but we have a propeller. We can still break through Tattoo Bowlers for now. And like, you know, we'll draw our Symbol Chips eventually. We have a Muse in hand. We can always get these back. And Spec Work, which sucks. I wanted my credits, and now like we don't have any credit engine going right now. We don't have a fermenter. We don't have a knickknack. We don't have any of that. But I'm seeing what they just did, and I'm like, there's no way it's going to be that much worse for us, right? Because we can easily get in to that server probably. I'm thinking a lot about like if I want to do a Muse thing. I'm pretty sure I decided not to, because I'm like, okay. I'm gonna get clicks first because I want to continue doing my lat engine right there at 4. I'm at 4. I say clicks. I'm using the wrong words. I want to do my Nuka thing to be efficient with my clicks. We draw some really good cards here, actually, like some incredibly good cards. We got DZMZ, which finally makes us save a buck like every single time we do anything for like tons of turns. We got a spec work, which allows us to like trash whatever we want to get off our thing. Like we can do DZMZ, Muse into Coalescence into spec work, and that's just like a ton of credits and draw over the next couple of turns, which is great. And we have a symbol chip, which means we can get back our Oiler, we can get back our Rising Tide, etc. What do I do on this turn? I think I use this turn as a setup turn again. Ah, I know what I do here. I use the second Nuka. You might ask why. Because in my mind, I've got 3 clicks left, right? I can do DZ plus Muse, and that's like okay, that's fine. Plus spec work, and that's like decent, and it puts me at 4 cards. But I don't have to do that this turn if I don't like need the credits for anything. I can do that on a future turn. I can do like DZMZ plus Muse this turn, and then spec work plus whatever next turn. So just seeing more cards would be nice. And what if there's a card I'd rather do this turn, right? Instead of thinking like trying to min-max all my resources into this turn, if I'm not like running, I can just view the next 2 turns as like the turns I'm going to be setting up and or presenting run potential. And so I thought I would draw, because I'm probably drawing with Nuka over the next 2 turns rather than just this turn. Plus, if I get something like a Madani or a Fermenter, which is exactly what I got, it would be lovely to do that early. I don't do Nuka, by the way, sorry. I do, I like completely lied to you. I just lied to you straight to your face. I did Stone Shit, which meant I actually only had 2 clicks the whole time. Ignore what I just said for the last minute. I only had 2 clicks. So like DC plus Muse is fine, but it's not great. While if I draw and find like a Madani or a Fermenter, I'd rather install that and get that going. So I think this turn I end up doing DZ, MZ Optimizer plus Fermenter instead. So I conclude that like that's a better way to have money be safe. I do Coalescence. Interesting. Now why? The benefit to that is that I get to spec work next turn, right? I get to spec work without like, because if I install a Fermenter, then like to do spec work, I'd want to have done this, right? So what this allows me to do is do spec work next turn without feeling the need to spend a click installing something else, right? So next turn I've got 4 clicks. If I installed Fermenter, click 1 would be Muse, click 2 would be Coalesce, sorry, that's spec work. Click 3 would be, like, let's say I was running. Click 3 would be, like, Simul Chip. And click 4 would be the run. And maybe I just wanted to present 2 runs. I'm not entirely sure. I think I'm probably wrong with the play that I took. I think it's probably more correct to do DZMZ plus Fermenter. Or possibly, like, a Madani. I think what I was hoping for was that, I know I want to do DZMZ. I think DZMZ is the right choice. I think installing something plus DZMZ is the best thing to do because you get the -1. I think next turn, I either want to give myself the capacity to run, right? Like run via doing a Simul Chip plus spec work thing, right? Spec work for the credits, Simul Chip to like get the last Icebreaker, Oiler. Or if they're going to set up, right? They're not going to protect anything. They're just going to like click for credits or draw or something. Then I'd like the Madani plus Nuka. That's like 1 click for installing Madani, 1 click for Nuka, 1 click for hosting things on Madani, and then like start setting up like the hand size engine. I'm not sure what the right play is here, but I do think that what I took was probably wrong because I think I tried to be modal, but setting up a Fermenter would be a little bit better for future players. I think. So I think I wish I had done Fermenter here. Try and stack that up more rather than like greed econ when I don't think I needed to get econ immediately, nor was I like pressured to get econ there, right? Like this is something I can do. I can get 4 credits for 3 credits whenever I want, and I don't have a knick-knack. So all I'm doing this for is like being able to play spec work, but I already have draw, right? I don't need to like ease out draw by having spec work, because I already have Nuka available. So I don't know. I would have done lat anyway. Like it doesn't change lat odds. I get Pisha Chow. What do they do? They did their turn like instantly. They took their HQ thing. So there's a card in here and 2 cards in here in their hand that they didn't have a second ago. They do a Hansai review to trash something else. They gain a credit to do that as well. And then they installed an upgrade here. Now I'm seeing an upgrade, and I'm like, there are like 2 upgrades in this game. There's Hollow Man and there's Analytic Void, and there are no other upgrades, and people pretend there are other upgrades, but as far as I can tell, there aren't. And like, oh, there's Angelique. No, there isn't. There's 2 upgrades in this game, and those are the upgrades that they could be playing. I'm being facetious, obviously. In my mind, I'm seeing this, and I'm thinking that's a Hollow Man, and they're gonna Hollow Man plus Fuji and kill me, right? Because next turn they can res the Hollow Man. Hollow Man says gain a bunch of, like, spend 4 to put 3 advancement counters on it, and then advance with your other 2 clicks, and Fuji does 2 damage. The Fat does 2 damage. That's going to hurt me a lot. It's going to buff up their Alco, giving them more draw in a second, because this does draw based on the amount of damage they've done to you, and I don't want that. That sucks. Or it's an Anoetic, which is possible, but Anoetic says trash 2 cards in hand and spend $2 to prevent the run from working, right? So you run, res this, tax, run again, I have to be taxed again, run again, I have to be taxed again. It's sort of this annoying play with tax. So I'm seeing this and I'm like, I gotta run one of these servers now. Because if this is Hollow Man Fuji, this needs to go, or this needs to go right fucking now. And if this is Fuji, I'd probably rather get rid of Fut. Because if I get rid of Fut, it will prevent the net damage being doubled. While if I go here and get that, then I'm still gonna take like 4 net damage. And that would put me, you know, it takes a couple of clicks to take that back, and I don't want to lose those clicks. So I want to do more efficient things. That's where my mind is at. My mind will be wrong, but that's where my mind is at. So, because I'm seeing that, I'm thinking, let's make sure at some point we're doing, we're doing our Simul chip to get us our Oiler so that we can break through here. To do that, that means we should probably do spec work on this. So that's already 2 of our clicks done. We're spec working and we're Oilering. In that case, there's no reason to Madani, right? Madani doesn't help to have my hand size increased, so there's no reason to. So I think the other thing I do this turn is Nuka, just to draw cards, just to see what is there. So let's see what I do again. Right, first off, I do spec work, because you should draw cards first before you do things. Next I do my Simul chip, get the Oiler. But, this is the mistake, yeah, so I just clicked the wrong button. I mentioned that I clicked the wrong button earlier. That was wrong. I clicked the wrong button here. I clicked the right button earlier. Probably. Yep, I go in, I break it. That's 3 of my clicks. Done. You might have asked, Spider, you have a knickknack. Why didn't you install it? And why didn't you, like, bump the muse? Because I forgot. That's basically it. I should have thought ahead of time that, like, with my 4 clicks, I can Simul chip, I can spec, and then I'm running. So I've got 1 spare click. I think I was like, I don't know. What if this is like a card? There's a card. I don't know. You know what? There's no reason to. I shouldn't be justifying it. So there's that. I think I should have done that. I end up playing Knick-Knack afterwards, but I should have definitely... No. Spider, you fool. If I had played... This wasn't intended, but this is worth keeping in mind. If I had played Knick-Knack, and it drew me a card, I would have been at 5 cards here, so I wouldn't have had a lat draw. Now, is that important? It's not that important, in as much as, okay, I'm getting 5 cards in the end of my hand either way. But it means that, like, I don't have a muse next turn to bump, right? So, like, you know, if I had done my Knick-Knack this turn, I lose my muse, I'm at 5 cards. If I don't use my Knick-Knack this turn, I have my muse and I'm at 5 cards. So if I just install this afterwards rather than beforehand, I've basically saved the existence of a muse, which allows me to draw a card next turn when I wouldn't have been able to if I'd done it this turn. So, like, I actually think I'm probably correct in not playing Knick-Knack, but I didn't know that at the time, I just fucking forgot. But yes, that is... I'm glad I didn't. Okay, let's go on. By the way, place your bets. What the hell is this? What do you think it is? It's not what I said. Well, it isn't Anoetic, but it's not relevant. It's not a Fuji or anything. It is Anoetic. It's Regenesis scoring a Fuji here. Now, possibly I could have seen that ahead of time. I think what HaverOfFun is singing is that, like, I can't really choose to run this server, I don't think. I think choosing to run this server is like a fool's errand. And if I had, I don't know this at the time, but this is Anoetic. I thought it might have been Hollow Man, but it's Anoetic. And since it's Anoetic, I'm not actually getting through, right? They res this, whatever it is, blah, 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 blah. They prevent 2 runs, and I'm probably not running this first click when I've got my 1 credit. So am I doing spec work and then running into it? That means I'm spending all 3 runs doing that. What if it's an agenda, and I take my damage from FUT and I take my Fuji asset retrieval damage, and then I'm annoyed again and I don't have many cards going on. I think like I'm unlikely to run this, especially with the upgrade there that could be an anoetic, right? So I think like they are always getting this Regenesis off. Regenesis, I guess I should explain, is a 1/3 agenda that lets you score a face down agenda from archives if it wasn't installed, if it wasn't in archives that turn. So someone could say, I should have run archives. They are a deck that runs Regenesis, and like there aren't that many agendas in the game, so you can kind of like know what agendas the Alco is running. There's like 3 agendas they're running. They could run that they're not, right? That's like, your send a message, your off-world offers, and like some other random Jinteki agenda, right? Like there's not actually that many agendas they could be running. So you could argue that I was supposed to assume that. I think that's a good argument. I actually think it's like a pretty good argument. I think like, what did Knickknack do for me? Knickknack saved a click next turn by not getting me to Knickknack, but it is worth thinking that they could have had hybrid release. And like hybrid release is a pretty bad case scenario. Sure, I'm not taking the damage from this because they don't score it, it just gets placed in the scored area. And I'm not taking the damage from FUT, so like I'm not getting hurt here, but like once they're at 5 agenda points, they can push lethal really, really easily. I am so much more on the back foot, and I'm not like particularly set up. I'm not set up. I've got all 3 breakers, I've got a minor econ engine, but I don't have that econ yet, and my DZMZs aren't all set up. I only have 1 of them, and I don't have Madani for like the weird like, card draw hog engine, right? So like I'm set up a little, which is like I can get through things, but if they have like 3 ice here, I can't really get through things, and they can just set up for having 3 ice here and putting something here because they're at 5 agenda points and they're decent. So look, I should have ran this server. I think like it's a little bit results-based analysis because they did have something in there, and if they didn't, it might look like a waste and I wasted a click. But I think that it is tough to justify doing a play like a Knickknack when the only thing I'm ever bouncing with it for a little while is this singular muse. I don't have any other muses, and like I could install a Principia, but that's like maybe one other thing I'm bouncing for a little bit of time. Since we've seen a muse already go away, right? We don't have that many, we only have so many more things to draw. I think I disagree with this play. I agree with doing this play now, or at the end of the turn than at the start of the last turn, but more so, but I should have ran archives, I think. Especially with 2 cards down. I think 2 cards down is like a good enough amount, especially if it costs nothing and you're not like doing that much input with your click, to be satisfied in saying that it's worth knowing what's there. And like, if it's 2 pieces of ice, like 2 Botos of the Water Tribe, or 2 Tattoo Bowlers, then like I know what ice they're less likely to have, so I can kind of, in my knowledge of what ice they might have, make an assumption. Okay. We're on turn 6. I'm a bit of a yapper, if you can't tell. Why did I run R&D? I ran R&D to bounce the Muse. I wanted to get a card draw and see what would happen and get some money. Specifically, I had 1 credit, so like I can't even install my Madani if I wanted to. So I just wanted the credits now. And so that's why I ran R&D, and like who knows? Could get something. I got a Saisentan. It's worth me knowing that Saisentan will be in my near future. I will see a Saisentan at some point, I assume, like installed here, here, or here. And so it's worth knowing that for me, that Echelon will break Saisentan for 3 credits. So it's good that I have my Echelon, and that it's something, if I've got 3 credits, I can possibly break Unknown Ice. Alright, then I'm thinking what the hell I want to do here, and I'm not really certain. I don't know what my best play is here, because I am worried that if I try and set up, right, like I do some sort of Nuka Madani play, they like shove something in here, it turns out it's a Hollow Man, and it's like install a 1/3, or so install a 2/3, because they can install a 2/3 for click 1. Click 2 is advance it +2 with Hollow Man, and click 3 is advance it for the 3rd time and score it, and that's a 2/3. And I'm like, I can't let you do that. I can't let you have a 2/3. So I'm worried about setting up, but I don't know the best way I'm going to be able to deal with that 2/3. But this is the thing I'm worried about, that if they just have a 2/3 and it's a Hollow Man, I lose. So I've got 2 choices here. I can like say, you've got a Hollow Man, I'm going to get rid of it, or I can say you don't have a Hollow Man, and that I'm going to pretend that's not a Hollow Man. And if that's not a Hollow Man, then that means that's an Anoetic Void in my brain. And that's what I decided to do. I decided to say, if that's a Hollow Man and you've got a 2-3 in hand, congratulations, you've won the game. If it's an Anoetic Void, I should do like a half setup, I think. What do I decide to do? Maybe I should stop yapping about what I'm planning on doing and just see what happens, because I don't remember this turn. Oh, I suppose I run Archives. I suppose what I'm concluding, don't know if it's a good conclusion. I think I was thinking, if this is a hybrid release, yeah, sorry, if they have a hybrid release in hand, they install a hybrid release and they get their other agenda here, right? Because a hybrid release is a 1/2 that says install a face down card. And so they install that and put that over here, and now they can score that, because for some reason I'm not able to run that ice because I don't have much money. So I decide to run this. I don't know if that's the right play. I think like at this point in the game, I'm a little bit lost on what is the most safe thing to do despite their actions, right? And so this is around the time in the game where like I'm not certain what I should do, and this is where like I need to learn. Was running Archives there the best choice overall? I assume yes, because it had a fucking thing in it. But like if it didn't have that, would that have just been like a terrible choice? Because with my 3 clicks, I could have popped a Nuka, I could have played my Madani, and then I could have activated my Madani, hosting things. Host like 4 cards, install my Fermenter, it costs nothing because of DZMZ, and then like next turn, or even during like the end of their turn, I install my Principia. That's cheap. Can I install Principia? I can't, because I wouldn't have any money because Madani costs 2. Maybe that's the issue. Maybe the reason I don't do that is because I can't get my Principia bounce back, and so it's not really that good. I could just like naturally install Principia, then do a run with Knickknack, and maybe that was the right play. You know what? I bet you that's what I should have done. Did I run and do Muse already? I did. I've got like a money issue right now, and I don't know the best way to deal with that. And the answer might be install Fermenter, pop it next turn, and just get 4 credits for 2 clicks, which is like pretty bad. But maybe that's like the best thing I can do. But Principia would be 3 credits for a click, so that's not going to be correct. I think... I'm not entirely certain what the best play on this turn would have been. I think that running to pop Muse was fine. I think like getting a card draw, just seeing what's there. If it's another DZMZ, if it's another DZMZ optimizer, that's fucking fantastic. If it's a Stone Ship Chart Room, that's fantastic. I'd love to see those sorts of cards. So I think like getting that run, getting the 2 credits is fine. And it means that then I can install that. So I think my first click is very good. I think I probably should have installed something else. It sounds weird to say that like running this was wrong because I got this, but like I don't know if that was right. But then like what is that card up there? Is it a what is that card? I can point. What is that card? That way. Is it a Regenesis? Is it a hybrid release? Those things could change things a little bit. So I'm not certain. I ran it. Obviously we can just talk about what actually happened in the game. And then what do we have for the rest of the turn? Do I know? Fermenter and click for credit. Okay. I choose Fermenter because I know I want credits, and I choose click for credit because we're both at 5, and like I really want like a spec work. Or I know I've seen 2 of them, so maybe I shouldn't be looking for spec work. I'm looking for like a DZMZ. I'm looking for, you know, no free lunch. These sorts of things. I could have done a Madani play. Like I could have spent this turn setting up Madani, finally hosting things on it, finally installing things through, but I don't. It is worth keeping in mind that next turn I can just install Principia for like, what is it? Is it just 1 credit? Is it 0 credits? Maybe I didn't need to do Muse. Maybe I should have installed Principia. Because it would have been 0 credits, right? Because all of these make it cost 1 less. DZMZ makes it cost 1 less. And I saw Principia, I bounced it, I get $4 back. There was probably a Principia play there. I suppose what I'm seeing as like, you know, if I want to be super greedy, I should never be installing Principia from hand. I should be installing it from Madani, because why spend a click from hand when I could spend no clicks? And so that's probably what I'm thinking, why I'm not doing Principia. But they're at so many agenda points that I think I've got to stop worrying about value, like long-term value, like saving the 1 click by not installing Principia, and thinking about how like next turn they're gonna put something here and I need to find it if it's a agenda. Like I need to make sure that I'm making the best runs possible and threatening as best as I can. So I probably should have just played Principia before I ran and kept my Muse on the field and keep the Muse for something else. That way I've got more money. But then the Fermenter's not bouncing. Oh, it's staying up. I'm not certain. Maybe the turn I did was great. This is like a really weird turn. The thing is, it's not actually like that impactful what happened this turn. Like I got the 2 agenda points, but like my decision between Fermenter, Muse, and Principia didn't impact it much, as you'll see for the rest of the game. But I think this is a turn that I could have optimized better if I was focusing on like a certain way of winning. But I'm not the best at figuring out if they're at 5 agenda points what my best play is. Like how the fact that they can win really easily relates to how I should be worried.
Hello again. I'm gonna be VOD reviewing my VOD review again because I yap a lot for this little round because it's a kind of complicated round for my brain to articulate, and I'm not sure what I want to do with it. But after watching it a couple of times more, I think I finally figured out like the main thing that I do wrong in this, which is that I see that I want to draw a card, and I'm immediately like, okay, I want to draw a card, and I want my Muse gone at some point, so I'm going to run draw a card, and I just choose to do R&D because that's a pretty safe thing to commonly do, and only after that do I think about other things I should do. I should have done a run, the run on R&D and the run on Archives should have been the same run, in as much as the thing that let me bounce something with Knickknack and what let me see Archive should have been the same thing. There was very little reason for me to run R&D. Sure, there's like a, the whatever % chance that I see an agenda and it's like, oh my god, I saw an agenda. But I'm doing 2 runs this turn and I only really needed to do 1 in order to benefit my game plan. That extra click that I saved easily could have been the Madani organizing engine, where by placing the Madani, I'm able to put the Fermenter out this turn, the Principia out at end of opponent's turn, bounce that back with Knickknack, get all my money back. And while I am correct that in this clip, I say that it doesn't actually matter too much for the rest of the game, because what ends up happening in the rest of the game means that I didn't need that extra money because I did enough, right? But if I'm thinking like, if what happened in the game didn't happen and I didn't, the things that happen in the future aren't as lucky for me, I would have needed that econ and I would have needed that value. And so I played this turn really weirdly, right? I do a run on R&D that I don't need to do, and I click for a credit. Both of those could have been different plays. I could have done Madani and host things on Madani, and then the click that made me install Fermenter, I could have just used as the Madani click that hosts all the programs, and then just done the Madani thing. And then I could have drawn twice. Right, and drawing twice would have been great, because I think if I did that, I probably would have also still had the lat equalization, and I would have had more money and access to more money on more turns really, really easily. So there was just a ton of blunders on that turn. I'm keeping all of this in, partly because I think it's worth thinking where my mind is at, but I also do think it's worth having what I think the correct answer is, which is click 1, probably run the archives, bouncing the Muse, see what I draw. Click 2 would be Madani, click 3 would be hosting things on Madani, and then you install something, and click 4 would be a draw, or click 4 would be something like that. I think that's what I did wrong. Okay, I'll let the rest of it play. I don't think I'm going to interrupt it anymore, so don't worry about having to hear the poor microphone from recording in Premiere.
Okay. Their turn, way quicker. Hedge fund into install into ice, right? I see this and I'm like, okay, they hedge funded because they can and they want to be able to res this ice, and this is an agenda. I'd be very surprised if this wasn't an agenda. In my mind, what they're singing is Spider's got 4 credits. Spider needs to gain a ton of credits and can gain 4 and can possibly gain more through Knickknack, but it's not going to be easy. And even if so, I know this is an anoetic void because I'm HaverOfFun, so they're gonna have to do that twice. That's a lot. And so they might see that and be like, no, I can't justify that, and then they win because it's a 3-2 agenda. It is a 3-2 agenda, spoilers. So how do I decide to go about it? In my mind, I want to make sure I've got as much money as I can going in, but I want to recognize that at this point, I think this might be an anoetic, and I realize that I need to do I need to do it at least twice. So I'm thinking here, I've only got 2 clicks that I can do before I run. If I've got 2 clicks, what are those clicks? How do I get the most money? Well, one way to get a ton of money is Coalescence. Coalescence costs $1 because of DZMZ. Gives me 4, so it's basically worth $3. And then Knickknack bounces it, so it's worth $5. Coalescence, great money engine. I could have similarly done Principia. Principia costs 0 and gives me $4. But it doesn't give me $7 because this gets bounced for the extra money. Or I'm not 7, 5. Did I say 7? I think I meant 5. I can also pop this for $4. I don't remember if I decide to, but I think I end up deciding to. I think like I'm really worried that it's like a big thing. But maybe I don't. I mean, we'll see. What happens? What do I do? I'm yapping to myself a lot. Okay, I do both. I knick-knack out that. It is a tattoo baller, which is cool because this just breaks it for 1 and 1 credit. Tattoo baller is really easy to deal with. They replace it with another piece of ice. This will be on the test. And then they just like let me through. And I think it took me a while to realize they were doing that because I didn't realize they were going to just let me through. But they just let me through. They have an anoetic blade, so they pay the 2 credits and the thing, but I can do my other click. I go in. They res a Boto. I keep calling this Boto of the Water Tribe because that's just how I remember the card. Boto of the Water Tribe is another barrier. You don't have to know what the text is. The text is like, do 2 net damage, trash a card in hand to end the run. It says that twice, so you have to break both of them. But it's 6 strength because it's already threat 4. It's like naturally 4 strength, but it goes to 6 strength if it's threat 4 or higher. But luckily, it is exactly 3 power counters and 3 credits to break. Now, I'm seeing this and realizing something kind of worrisome, which is that I need to be able to get through this more, because they're probably going to put more things in this server. Now, Principia, luckily, is a thing that breaks through that. But also, like, I've only got 2 symbol chips left in the deck. I need to find that Rising Tide at some point. But it's not too worrisome for now. I'm trying to work out if I can be cute about Boto of the Water Tribe. But no, I steal their 2-3 agenda. Doesn't say any text on it. Don't worry about it. But now we're somewhat even. Like, crazily enough, this and this, these 2 runs, which didn't cost me too much in the end, right? Like, I think I was at 11 credits earlier. All it cost me $4, I think. It cost me, it just cost me $4. I don't have to explain why. And that was great. And it actually cost them way more than it costed me. But obviously, with the exception that they're never repaying for Boto of the Water Tribe, but I have to repay for Boto of the Water Tribe every single time. All right, they get to do some egg stuff. Now, they did something very funny to me. So they do egg. One of these cards was a petty cash, I think. Is that right? No, I just completely lied to you. They do the funny Alco thing. They gain a credit, and they did Hansai review, and then they installed a card on their Writ of Servitude. That's where they did one more thing. Did they just click for credit? They clicked for a credit so that they can Hansai review again. That might be one of the reasons why they didn't res this ice, by the way, because I mean they couldn't Hansai review. That's like a, you know, the corp can't go that low on credits if their credits are things like Hansai review where it costs credits to gain credits. They install something. I'm seeing this and I'm like, brother, in Aurelian. This is like not a good place for them to have their what's the word I'm looking? Agendas, because it's might be pretty easy for me to break through this considering I've got an agenda suite outside of a Boto, and since outside of a propeller, and they can protect this easily because I don't have a way. I'm not showing a way to break it. Now, I'm sure HaverOfFun knows that their deck has a Principia, and if I trashed a Principia last turn because I was overdrawn, I might have another Principia. Now, I am thinking a little bit about whether I could deep dive, right? Because I could run this server, run this server, run this server, and then I will probably find an agenda in here and win. But if this is a thing that requires my barrier to break it, it could be a little tough, right? If it's a barrier breaker, because I don't have a barrier breaker, but this is not a proper barrier breaker. I end up scrolling through the side and seeing if Tattoo Baller has strength or not, and it does. So I do need the benefit on this. I think that might be next turn. I'm not so set. Right. I think I try and threaten deep dive. And my idea is that if this doesn't have barrier, if this is any other piece of ice, I can deep dive this turn and win. But it isn't. But I still do my knick-knack thing, try and find a card. I find a propeller, which is really funny. I find my 3rd propeller, which means I can now break through Tattoo Ballers and Botos of the Water Tribe. But I don't get through, obviously, because there was a barrier there. And now I'm in an interesting spot. I can choose to do a couple of things here. I can try and set up, right? Maybe try and find, like, my Simmel chip so that I don't keep relying on propellers. If I'm having to run this server, like, more than once more, I, like, need my Rising Tide. Or I use my Principia, I suppose. But that's not, like, a cheap way to do it, right? Rising Tide is better economically, I think. I could get my DZMZs. I could finally set up my Madani. But if this is a agenda, I need to break it. And I'm like, there's pretty likely for this to be an agenda. They drew 3 with their Alco, and then they drew an extra one. Like, they didn't draw 3, they drew 2, but they saw 3 cards and got an Alco. So out of 4 cards, it's like decently likely they'll find an agenda. Not guaranteed, but somewhat likely. And so since an agenda is pretty safe here, like, it's equally safe because both of these are barriers, right? Now we know that as audience members. But in my mind, I'm thinking I should install this and quickly see what this is. So that's what I do, I think. I think I install that. What am I yapping about? Right, I'm just worried about what's going on, I suppose. Like, I don't know what's going to be there. It ends up being, you know, this breaks it for 3, this gets broken for 3, so I can get in. I don't use my Airblade because I already can break through that for 3. And then it's a cohort, it's not an agenda. This is like a good play, right? Like, a common play is that, you know, they'll put like assets behind ice when they're threatening like really good agenda potential, and then you have to like spend a bunch of money to then also spend money to trash it when it's like not that important. I should have done a different play this turn, I think. I think what I should have done... Well, no, because like, look how much money I have left. Oh, but I spent 2 money on trashing it. I probably should have played Madani and put all of these in like the Madani section so that I can install them on their turn. I think like this was a turn I could have Madani'd because I had this extra click remaining and I just installed a propeller from hand when I don't think I needed to. And like the only thing that would punish me or like require me to spend more clicks to run is like an anoetic void. But like, okay, what are they anoetic voiding? What are they defending there? So I don't know. I think this was like a misplay. I could have done my Madani. I could have, you know, it would have cost a little bit of money and it would have meant I couldn't trash their cohort. But I think that's fine. And like, if I do Madani, it means that I can install my Principia. And then next turn when I run with Knick-Knack, I can install Principia. And I can also do Pisha Chow, which is important because I could put it here on this piece of ice right here. And then I get to double dip on my deep dive and get even more cards. Not that double dipping is too important because I'm pretty likely to see a Fuji. They've got 2 more in the deck and like I'm going to see 8 cards. So like in 26 cards, I think I'm decently likely to find a Fuji. Not guaranteed, but decently. Okay, I decided to run archives for my final click, but I don't know how necessary that was. I think in my mind I was like worried about the hybrid release again, but like if it's a hybrid release, I'll just run server 2 later with money. Would I have that much money? Maybe not. Maybe that's what I'm worried about. Hybrid release in hand gets them some sort of agenda in here. Like Knick-Knack's gonna get me at most like $3, not a lot. I suppose I should be worried about money at this point. Which would have been a good reason to do the Madani, because the Madani would have helped us get money, because we could have installed the Principia for 0 and bounced it for a ton. So they installed something in server 1. I'm looking at this and I'm a little bit confused. I'm like, what's the benefit of server 1 over the other servers? Server 1 doesn't cost that much. There's no strict benefit. It could just be a mind game, right? Like, this is actually the agenda. I'm not going to make it a lot of tax, but you're not going to think this is an agenda. You're going to think this is a cohort because I didn't put it behind a lot of tax. I'm looking at this situation and thinking I would love it if I could deep dive. Like, Propeller can actually break this, but I can't deep dive because I've got no money, right? Right? This is wrong. I actually can go here, 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 and spend my 2 credits on a deep dive and see something in here. But what it would cost is that Knick-Knack would have to bounce either an Echelon or my, whatever this guy's called, Euler. And that's the only way I can get the credits. Now, I am seeing this and I'm starting to get really worried, right? I can spend every turn I have running these servers, but eventually it's going to cost like 6 credits, 7 credits to do that consistently. And like, I'm not getting that many credits each turn. And I haven't installed my Madani yet, so I haven't actually spent my slow turn setting up for like a while, right? So I could go for this play right now, do the deep dive. I've got a, you know, there's 23 cards. I'm looking for 2 specific cards, and I see 8. Someone's going to be better at math than me, but the back of the hand math I'm going to do is say that there's 1 every 12 cards, and so there's an 8 in 12 chance. I've got like a, this is my back of the napkin math. It's not correct. Let's say I've got loosely a 2 in 3 chance of winning. That's not correct, but let's say I do. If I go for the line I'm going for. 2 in 3 chance, pretty good, considering that it's hard for it to get any better. If this is a agenda, I can run this and win. If it's not an agenda, I can try and install Pisha Chow and like get a double deep dive, but that would cost an extra turn. And if this is an agenda and I don't try and run it, that could be really bad. But if I try and have my egg, if I try and have my cake and eat it too, then like spending money on this and spending money on this could be too much to ask for. I go for the deep dive play. Is it right? I don't know, but it's what I go for. It takes me a while to recognize it because like I'm really mad that I don't have the credits, and I'm annoyed at myself last turn for wasting money on the cohort when I didn't need to. But then I finally realized that I can get rid of my echelon, which I choose to do. I say that like I'm gonna draw a symbol chip, I'll just get my echelon back, and like, well, the other thing, sorry, let's actually explain this. I started to the echelon, partly because echelon won't ever force me to end the run, and at this point, like I've got icebreakers, right? Include Principia in here. I've got icebreakers, so I can beat end the run subroutines, which means if they're gonna do net damage, that's like fine. I can like pop my nuka. I've got another nuka. That's okay. Like dealing net damage to me isn't gonna kill me anymore. Not really, because I'm gonna be at full cards. So I don't need the thing that breaks sentries. That's just like it's like efficient, but it's not necessary. And like getting a tempo play here by doing my deep dive would be nice. So I try and break through. And yep, they had a Fuji and I win. it just ends like that. That game was an interesting game. I thought this game was one of the more interesting ones because I think it shows some key misplays, right? Like you can know what ice the enemy is likely going to have, or at least the consequences of general ice. Now, because I don't know every card in the game, I don't know all of the ice, I don't know like all the risks I could take, but I think like to go from new to like a little bit of experience, I should be thinking that like Hatu and Scatterfield are like the two main early I should be thinking about that could end the run. And so as long as I've installed my Propeller and my Oiler, which I could have done, I could have been able to get that FUT. And like that FUT would have been nice to have seen and gotten out early, because I did take a bit of damage from that. Did that damage affect me a lot? Let's say no. I think it killed a spec work, which was kind of sad. But that was about it from memory. I was also probably running this server on that last turn, worried about something nebulously and keeping my clicks for a nebulous reason when I didn't need to. Like even if it's like what? They could go out of region for like something that ends your run if you don't spend a click. But since I've got $2 extra, I can probably break through most like HB ice that's really expensive, but you spend clicks to break through subroutines. But maybe if they had installed like a Bran, or if they had installed a I don't know, one of those other expensive ice, I guess that's what I was worried about. The ice subroutines, the bio rate ice subroutines that you'd rather spend clicks to go through. But I should have done Madani. I think I should have done Madani, and like I have this untapped potential of Econ, especially in Principia, that I just didn't go for. And when the end turn was a little bit worried about Econ, like if I didn't win there, I'm like in a really worrisome Econ position where they can like threaten a lot harder because I've just spent 2 credits and my whole turn doing fuck all. So I think like I should have done Madani on that previous turn, but I spent like 6 turns not doing a Madani thing when I could have. And like remember, this deck's a Madani deck, right? The point of the deck is to like gain this really good value from like installing things like Principia on the off turn so that you can knick-knack it, or installing your this thing that costs 1 for free because DZMZ makes it free. Right? That's like the point of the deck, and I didn't play for it, which meant I wasn't ever doing a low tempo turn or like a low value turn so that I can do high value turns later, because I kept trying to apply the pressure. But it meant that like the pressure I was applying only had such a high strength. It couldn't go much higher because I hadn't done the Madani, right? Like I sort of, there were 2 lines I could go for where every single turn, imagine this is like a chart of pressure. I went for like the same amount of pressure every single turn, right? I didn't play Madani, I didn't do any slow plays, but I, knick-knacked things aggressively. My propellers are really, really cheap, so I did a fair bit of pressure. And you know what? It meant I got to see that 2-3 agenda. That was really nice. And I got to do the deep dive, even though it cost me like a possible value, and they let me win. But I could have done something where like I have a Madani, then it's much stronger, then like, I don't know, I do another Madani turn, and then it's stronger, right? Now, if they did a lot of value here, it would have been really bad for me, right? And maybe that would have put me really far down because of all the pressure they would have been able to get consequently from seeing me do a low tempo play. But I think this may have been better for me if I had done the Madani a little bit earlier. There was another turn that we were a little bit confused on. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, there was turns where like this turn where I put in the fermenter. Like as you can see, it didn't really matter, right? I got 4 credits from it either way. It just cost me an extra click, and I wasn't being like super good with my clicks, so it was probably mostly fine. But it is it was something I should have been a little bit more cognizant of. That being said, like, you know, I've yapped for like I think half an hour just looking at this game. It took like a whole hour looking at this game. It took like half an hour to go through the game. I spent a lot of time thinking on a game that lasted, I think, like 7 turns. That's not a lot of turns for 30 minutes. But I thought this was a really interesting game. I think like this game, to me, shows some really good fundamental Netrunner stuff if you're happy that a runner wins. I think I could have played that game better. I think there was a lot of value stuff. Let's go back to the mulligan really quick. I think you got what you expected from this mulligan, right? Like, I was complaining the whole game about money. I didn't start with a fermenter. I didn't have a Madani or Madani plus DZMZ in order to do good things. All I had was draw, and what I had was the Icebreaker Suite. And you know what? I manipulated the Icebreaker Suite pretty well. I think I played the hand that was granted to me in a macro sense particularly well. I think in a micro sense, there was like things with the Principia that I didn't do aggressively enough. When Madani was presented to me, I didn't like let myself have a low value play. I kept being aggressive, and it worked out for me, but it may not have in other instances. But I think that's all I wanted to say on this game. I think like I'm pretty satisfied with my analysis of this game. And video's an hour and a half. Maybe I should put the co-op one into a separate thing. I might do that. I might put the co-op video into a separate thing. It'll be easier to consume. So I'll quickly organize that. Thank you for watching. Hopefully this was at all interesting. Let me know if it wasn't. And don't let me know if it was. I'll see you some other time. Or next video, whatever. Bye.